This is true. If we're keeping it PG-13, we are allowed one F-bomb. So, all right, we'll move away from the preview of some extra emotes that will be available, and let's get back to our topic at hand. When last we left off, we were going over some Alfred Hitchcock quotes as we were exploring the fundamental nature of horror and horror storytelling. As a storyteller, as a writer, as a even as a player, how you can lean in and help accent the horror that your DM, GM, ST would want to offer you. Well, all right, we shouldn't get too disturbing for you then, Chris. I hope not, anyway. Also, Vezric, that's a very amusing emote you have. Now, where do we go from here, right? We were discussing some of the fundamentals, and we were exploring the concept of horror as prompted in The Curse of Strahd and in the Dungeon Master's Guide. There are some other things that we can do to explore and understand horror. But in so doing, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to... the knowing of horror will not take us out of the ability to be horrified. So I want to go over something, a really neat worksheet here with you all. This is the elements of horror. All fiction seeks to get the reader to identify with the characters of the story. In horror fiction, the emotions of the audience are supposed to mirror those of the positive human characters in certain, although not all, respects. The appropriate reactions to the monsters in question compromise shuddering, nausea, shrinking, paralysis, screaming, and revulsion. This mirroring effect, moreover, is a key feature of the horror genre. Here are some common character, emotional, and physical reactions. Now, these are words that you can use if you are writing. I hope the conversation went well, Orchid. Welcome back. These are also, as a storyteller or a writer, things that you want to consider. What would cause these... Long is zang. So not a zhang, not a zhang, but a zang. More of a zang with a ang, not a zhong with a You're welcome to laugh at me too, Orchid, like, for my mispronunciations. I'm trying. Close, all right, close enough. You get what I mean. Although here, like, Orchid's being polite, and I actually just, like, said something, like, terribly inappropriate because the tone of my word was slightly off. And it either means, like, long, a very common used word, or, you know, a very bad curse, you know? And Insomnia Night RPG, thank you for the raid. And Raven, thank you for the shout out to Insomnia as well. Welcome. We just got into part 2 of our horror storytelling workshop. So please do, hey, stay. We're going to keep it PG-13. So if you get scared easily, we're talking about concepts of horror. We're not invoking things in particular. Hooray! Almost inappropriate. Awesome. Thank you very much for coming over in the raid here. Raven for the shout out, and let's give a shout out as well to Insomnia Night RPG. So welcome to the Hero Zone, everyone. We are getting spoopy, everyone. So these are things that are related to the concept of fear. How do we react? Remember, horror is the feeling of revulsion that follows a frightening sight, sound, or otherwise experience. So these are signs of horror: breathlessness, chills, cringing. Although I don't know. I guess you could say some of the stuff on the internet is cringy and is therefore horrific. Cringing, crying, dry mouth, frozenness, things like this. This is what you want to invoke in your audience if you're writing for horror. Oh, she's... The horrific monster. There's a broader scope of fiction that seeks to induce fear in the reader. But the character's emotional reaction to the monstrous in horror stories is not merely a matter of fear. Rather, threat is compounded with revulsion, nausea, and disgust. The tendency in horror novels and stories is to describe monsters in terms of and to associate them with filth, decay, deterioration, slime, and so on. The monster is not only lethal, but also disgusting. Hi, Senio. So we were addressing the concept out of the Curse of Strahd and the Dungeon Master's Guide to get our story in D&D and how they suggest raising tension, approaching fear and horror, and other things along those lines. The concept of the story and some mechanics that can back it up. The monster in horror fiction must be threatening physically, psychologically, socially, morally, spiritually, or all of the above. Impure. The horror monster must also be impure. What do we consider impure? Anything that violates the generally accepted schemes of cultural categorization. We consider impure that which is categorically contradictory. The categorically ambiguous. Amphibians, they both swim and hop, can exist in both water and out of water. Incomplete representatives of their class. Rotting things, things not fully formed, things with parts missing. Formless things, dirt, blobs, fog. Examples: fusion, disparate entities fused into one stable being. The spider-like erector set creature with the bald, one-eyed doll's head in Toy Story. Fission, disparate entities that one being changes into and back from at different times, or a multiple figure whose identities are opposite. Werewolves and other shapeshifters, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Magnification, enlargement, giant people, giant sharks, giant animals. Massification, hordes, unnaturally large numbers of something dangerous or relatively harmless. Jellyfish in sphere, rats, locusts, snakes, spiders in arachnophobia, zombies, vampires in I Am Legend. Metonymy, something not revolting in itself associated with things that are. Dracula and rats and wolves. Right, Dracula, as we discovered from our exploration of Curse of Strahd, is actually very charismatic, very suave, very alluring. And that's where the monstrous nature, because you are lured in. And this isn't even just Strahd. This is like any vampire, most vampires, right? There is that allure, that immortality, the wealth, the prestige, the knowledge, the lonely castle on the moors of England or whatever, right? But there is, right? It is not the look. Owning a castle's not revolting. But there's, then when you get into, well, it's not upkept, so there's spiders and rats and other things. Or rats often, might have a fear with them because, yeah, maybe they'll bite, but also I don't know where they've been. Have they been in the garbage? Do they carry disease? Do they have fleas? They cause the bubonic plague. Yeah! The monsters must be regarded as both threatening and impure. If only threatening, then the emotion is fear. If only impure, the emotion is disgust. But if both, the emotion is horror. There's a friend that's looking to mix Curse of Strahd with Call of Cthulhu. He's going to love this stream. Well, I hope so, Senio. Things that go bump in the night. Oh, yeah, giant shark people even. Zsa Zsa Gabor, say Zha Ad Ing. Zhang. Or let's see, no, Because it's a Zaza. No, it was Zsa Zsa Gabor, not Zaza Gabor. Zsa Zsa Gabor, so it'd be Zhang. Zhang, oh, with an O. Zhang is long. Zha ongoing, just run it together and pronounce it fast. Zhang. Zhang is long. Zhang is long. All right, there we go. There, it didn't take that Zhang for me to learn. Being horrified. As a reader, I am in an abnormal state of physically felt emotional agitation, shuddering, tingling heartbeat caused by the thought that the monster is a possible being. The monster has the property of being threatening in ways portrayed in the fiction. The monster has the property of being impure, where such thoughts are usually accompanied by the desire to avoid being touched by the monster. Now, do you need to break down everything when you're writing your campaign or your big bad evil guy or whatever? Do you have to go through this more sterile or categorical definition of the words? No, you don't have to. It doesn't hurt to understand things in this sense so that you can customize it, you can apply the concept in a lot more organic way. Because knowing the difference between fear, disgust, and horror can add subtlety and flavor to your presentation. The structure of horror and plotting. General theme and structure. Most horror fiction represents the process of discovery, right? The unknown. We find out more, we find out more. The thriller is that edge of the seat. There are two basic plots, the complex discovery plot and the Overreacher plot. The point of the horror genre is to exhibit, disclose, and manifest that which is, in principle, unknown and unknowable. The complex discovery plot, theme, knowledge, discovery of the unknown. Most horror fiction represents the process of discovery. So does most disaster fiction, but without the impure monster. The complex discovery plot, onset of horrific event, and evidence, discovery of its cause, confirmation of its cause, confrontation leading to victory or defeat. 4 simple steps. You can have the above elements presented in any combination, but they must follow 1 to 4 order. 1-4, 2-3, 2-4, 3-4, 1-2-3-4. You can start in media res and flashback, but the order is the same. You can only leave out the discovery step when it's already known or assumed that the monster exists. The discovery plot, onset of the horrific event, evidence, discovery of its cause, confrontation leading to victory or defeat. The confirmation plot, onset of horrific event, discovery of its cause, confirmation of its cause. The Overreacher plot. The central character is a mad scientist or necromancer in search of forbidden knowledge, scientifical, magical, or occult. This discovered knowledge is tested by an experiment or incantation of evil forces. Theme: there is some knowledge better left undiscovered. Stages: preparation for the experiment. Practical: experimenter must secure the materials or ingredients required for the experiment. Philosophical: experimenter will provide both an explanation and a justification for the experiment. Experimenter often has a helper, like an Igor in Frankenstein, to whom he can explain how the experiment is supposed to work and what its significance, moral, scientific, ideological, metaphysical, is supposed to be. Preceded or interspersed with setting, local, other characters who may be close to the experimenter to establish his personal, family, and love relationships. They may also provide resistance to the experiment. They're also there to be put in danger, to generate suspense. Now, this, again, I hope I'm not causing eyes. Chris, if you needed to go to sleep, maybe this is helping you. I promise this is getting to something. Bear with me. For as much as this might sound experimental, it is referential, right? With examples to Frankenstein and whatnot. There are different systems that are going to focus on different aspects of horror here. Vampire the Masquerade is very good with this as a set of mechanics. This is from Philosophy of Horror. If you're looking for the bigger reference, Philosophy of Horror. Because there are mechanics in Vampire that back up these kinds of relationships. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have it in Dungeons and Dragons, or you can't have it in All Flesh Must Be Eaten, or Kobolds Ate My Baby, or, some other RPG. You can't, you can still have this in Dread, or Monster of the Week, or things along those lines, Alien RPG. But for sure, Vampire has this built in. The experiment is conducted. It may be preceded by several failed attempts. The experiment succeeds, but goes awry. It unleashes dangerous, uncontrollable forces, which usually destroy those nearest. This is Alien. If that wasn't a big example. It is the creation's destruction that causes the experimenter to recant and come to his senses and commits him to destroying it. Some, however, don't recant. This could even be like Blade the Vampire, right? He's a vampire himself. He hunts vampires. Or Vampire Hunter D. The vampire was made. The vampire didn't want to be made and now is going to destroy other vampires to prevent more from being made. Confrontation, failed attempts, followed by an all-or-nothing battle with a climax. Differences between the Discovery Plot and the Overreacher Plot. They both have to do with knowing the unknown. However, the Discovery Plot centers on the belief that denying the unknown is a dire mistake, while the Overreacher Plot deals with some things are better left unknown. Does that distinction come through for you all? They both have something to do with knowing the unknown, and the unknown is the core. If you take nothing else away from this workshop, horror is born out of the unknown. Okay? You want to run something scary? Lean into the unknown. You don't memorize a bunch of terms, a bunch of academics, or whatever. Keep that in mind. So they both have to do with knowing the unknown. However, the Discovery Plot centers on the belief that denying the unknown is a dire mistake. It is a mistake to deny the unknown. We seek knowledge, we have to know. While the Overreacher Plot deals with the some things are better left. Right? The dwarves dug too deep, and what do you get? Horror. And terror. That's right, there are three. There's the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns, Goblin of Gygaxanor. These plots can be mixed. Plots of Discovery or Overreacher can be mixed with subplots of the other type. There are endless combinations. Now, this is an amazing worksheet that you can use at home. If only you could fill it in if you want, but you can ask yourself these questions. Because remember, horror is born out of things that are both threatening and impure. Otherwise, you have fear from threatening or disgust from impure. Fear and disgust together are a backbone of horror. So, in this regard, let's talk about any monster here. Tell you what, Phobomancer, a name that is built for this workshop. Phobomancer, are you still with us? I do like making the workshops interactive. And welcome back, Rip Artist. Alright, maybe we don't have Phobomancer with us. Goblin of Gygaxanor. I presume you're still here. Yeah. All right, Goblin. I want you, because I do want this to be participatory. What would be kind of a monster that maybe a lot of us might be familiar with? You can make it uncommon if you want as well, but something that we can discuss. Name a monster. Could be from a book, a comic, a movie, something along those lines. Could be from D&D if you want to make it D&D. I mean, we're all usually here for D&D workshops. I'm here likely a bit delayed due to having you in the background. All right, Dragon. So just give me a monster and let's take it through the worksheet here. Could even be a goblin if you want it to be. We could discuss the goblin. Ah, that's good whiskey. Do you want to use a goblin? We can use a goblin. I do. I do know what one of those is, Goblin. All right. So, if we're going to use a Penangolin, Penangolins are an undead from Southeast Asia. I would urge you, if you don't know what one is, you can look one up. And of course, you know, folktales might have them do one thing or the other. But Penangolins are very interesting. So here's the concept. And again, we can go through, we can be like, how is a goblin horrific? Can we even make goblins horrific? Are they just disgusting? Are they just fearful? Or are they actually horrific by combining the two? But let's take a look at the Penangolin, all right? Describe how the monster is threatening. You're fine, Goblin. So this is a threatening monster. Physically, the monster is threatening because it will choke you with its body made of intestines. It does actually harm people. And Goblin or anyone else out there, if you want to add more to the topics, that's fine. Because we can, you know, this is a mental exercise, but you are welcome in chat to bring up these things that you can identify. Psychologically, how is the monster threatening? The monster can be among you, among us. The Penangolin is among us. Because it does fit back into its body. If you're vaguely, quickly, and keeping it PG-13, a Penangolin is kind of a vampire that's a human head, and then the rest is like the guts of a person, like the innards, that will like float out. So like, if my torso was really just a hollow shell, and my head could like crawl out using my bones or my guts as like transportation, that's what a Penangolin is. Goes out, sucks blood. If I recall, was the Penangolin had something to do? Does the Penangolin steal babies also? Was it either a steal baby or punish wicked mothers? It was. I could be mixing it up with another another creature from that area as well. Psychologically, if there is a moral component, I'm remembering it and it does something like it punishes, although that could be socially as well, but psychologically this monster could be anyone because the head only comes off at night. And then at some point it has to soak its innards in vinegar before being able to squeeze back into the body. Socially, it could mete out justice, punish the wicked, or victimize the innocent. How is this a morally threatening monster? The undead are in many cultures a taboo. Orchid Twilight, if you can comment on this. Now, it's become kind of a stereotype that video games that go to China have to have skeletons censored out of them, or the country won't allow them because skeletons are a cultural taboo or are too scary or something along those lines. So morally, this could go against the morals of the people that the dead come back when they're not supposed to, because death is more of a sacred thing. It's supposed to be sad, yes, but also carry on respect and make us appreciate the life that we have for those who are still living. And a creature like this flies in the face of that and makes death a trivial thing and a scary thing. Spiritually, this could even be something like a demon. Now, by the way, not all monsters have to check something or some things off on every line. Because if it has some threat, maybe a monster is just physically threatening. If we take a look at a goblin might be physically scary because they are a goblinoid. They don't have the same body as humanoids in various ways. Are goblins psychologically scary? Could be, depending on the setting. You might say, no, they're just little gribblers, like, whatever. Are they socially threatening? Maybe, yeah, like maybe they go and like will steal the farmer's cows every now and again. That may not necessarily count as a social threat, though. But all right, so let's say we go down and goblins pose no moral threat or spiritual threat, but they're just physically threatening. Well, that makes them threatening. Welcome back, Orchid. Now, how is the monster impure? Is it categorically ambiguous, incomplete representative of its class, or even formless? And the Penangolin, if we go back to this, how does that fit? Categorically ambiguous is amphibians. They both swim and hop, can exist in and out of water. Incomplete representatives of their class, rotting things not fully formed, things with parts missing. So I would say Penangolins would be incomplete. They're not necessarily formless. They do have like the lower part that's the lungs and the intestines and whatnot. I wouldn't say that they're formless because their form is still there, but they're definitely an incomplete monster. And so there we have it. We have been able to identify the horror of the Penangolin monster because of the qualities of how it's threatening and what its impurity is. And where those two overlap, right there in the middle, hi, that's where the horror can lie. That's where you can extract the most impact from the monster. You can take stuff from the fear, you can take stuff from the disgust, but the sweet spot of the Penangolin is where it overlaps. Whoop, there we are. There's my Eye of Ra. Is where it overlaps between the two, because it is just icky all the way around. Senio, these are notes from Noel Carroll's Philosophy of Horror. Noel Carroll's, or Noel, some people go Noel, but all right, you're gonna have to wait, Orchid. Unless Raven's out there, I can't do that right now while I'm presenting. So this goes on to continue to prompt, how do you extract horror from the different elements you want to write about? List which and how any of the following techniques will be used. Right? This is your writing exercise. Disparate entities fused into one stable being. Disparate entities that one being changes into back and forth. Enlargement. Hordes of something dangerous or even relatively harmless. People are scared of a bunch of holes. Right? Holes. But you get a bunch of them together and it squigs people out. That would be massification. Metonymy. Something not revolting itself, but are associated with things that are. Put your readers in an abnormal state of physically felt emotional agitation, shuddering, tingling, etc. How is the monster a possible being? Can you at least make something? It can defy, in fact, that's where some of the horror comes from. It can defy a lot of other things, but how could it be possible? How is the monster threatening? How is the monster impure? If you stop and think about these things and you write them out, this will give you great prompts for horror writing, for presenting your monsters and your plots and your NPCs that are supporting your story. Such thoughts are usually accompanied by the desire to avoid being touched by the monster. What are the physical or emotional reactions to the monster? The xenomorph in Aliens leans into this as well. If you bring up the xenomorph, what of this? That's a whole process of a creature. You definitely don't want to be touched by it, especially its blood or its younger version, because that's how the aliens are born. Anyway, I can provide this. I'll provide this worksheet because this is a list of great things for you to sit down and contemplate. Okay? This is a great list of things. It gets you to think maybe in a more categorical or an academic term, but sometimes if you just write it out, it's there in front of you and you can go back and reference it. Now let's back this up with some more notes. The key to horror, because some of you might be more visually inclined to learn. Horror is fundamentally born out of the unknown. And as we saw in the document, there are different kinds of horror, built through the unknown. We have suspense. We have fear. We have violence. Hi, Bane. We have gore. And we have the supernatural. These are different types of horror. And you might, if we do something visual, you might draw lines. You know how people will like do the different, the categories, or it'll almost look like a weird star as like different abilities and whatnot are going out. All of this, well, we did have a Venn diagram earlier. Now, this is the one where we have we have the old, what was this? The old Plymouth logo. And then you have your, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, and it could be any number. I'm just 4 or 5. I'm just going with 6 here. And then what you do is you go, all right, well, this story maybe doesn't have a lot of suspense. It might have a little bit of suspense. And so you mark it. But you go, this story has a lot of fear. It's a lot of fear and and it's super supernatural. There's a medium amount of gore, and then the violence, though, the violence is not too bad. And so then you go through, and then you make you make your shape. About how much area this thing takes up. And so that's the shape of your story. I don't know if this is mind mapping Demon Quiller. There's some name for this type of a diagram. I forget what it is, though. So fear is a form of horror, violence, gore. Now, supporting all of this, what has to be around it and juxtaposing. Atmosphere is a big part of horror. If the world you live in is such where what did we use? The simpler times. When you would steal a loaf of bread and get your hand chopped off. That would be more like the norms, values, or morals. It can be very fearful, getting a hand chopped off. But it also may not be as horrific because you shrug your shoulders, you go, well, that was gross, but that person stole bread, and everyone knows that if you steal bread back in these simpler times, you get your hand chopped off. So actually seeing people without hands, you just go, oh, you were a thief. I got it. I'm not really scared. Especially because taking your hand means that you can't steal as easily anymore. But the unknown is what pushes against all of these things. It pushes against, like, this is why we have the points and we have the blunt ends of our pentagon here. It pushes against the values. It's like what we were talking about earlier, Orchid. I think you might have been away for it, but for a lot of video game companies, they pre-censor their games to take out skeletons or zombies and stuff, because in Chinese culture, those violate the values, personal morals, or the values of the society. And so in order to sell your game, they remove that sort of content. Now, I don't know if that's just it might be a super reduced thing. It could be nuanced. It could be regional. It could have been with the last whatever. However, yeah, WoW had to remove a lot of that stuff to be able to be released in China. And so in that culture, there is a fear or a terror of skeletons or zombies, such that it is a level of horror that is not permitted. Hey, that's a great bribe. That's how you get level 10 spells, Orchid. Yeah, you were Minecrafting, where there are skeletons and zombies. A radar chart or a star chart? Oh, a star chart might make sense then, Belle. Thank you very much. Spider charts? And so the unknown pushes against these things, right? It lies, boom, right in the middle. It is an inexorable force. Michael Myers shouldn't exist, but he does, and he impacts the reality around him. He can swing at a tree and take a notch out of the tree. He can trim your hedges if he wanted to. He can also murder you. He goes against things like morals, like hurting other people, cultural, broader societal values like killing people, norms, because he should not exist. He is not normal. He adds to the atmosphere of the horror. I mean, you know, he has this music that follows him around everywhere, right? No, but there is just this stillness and silence that accompanies this monster. And this can even violate the beliefs, causing horror, causing terror. Because in your belief structure, the dead shouldn't be walking. Or that this is something that you might have read in a religious book of, I don't know, St. Patrick drove the snakes from Ireland. And if that is a core part of your beliefs, and that is a part of who you are and what you truly believe, and you live and breathe it, seeing a snake in Ireland would be horrific. Because according to your belief structure, which you know should be like, this is law, this is known, this is how society and the world works, there should be 0 snakes in Ireland because of St. Patrick. And so a snake in Ireland would be a very terrifying thing. Meanwhile, Kapadrazi brought it up earlier, people in Australia, it's not that they can't be scared of spiders, but spiders are just such a part of life, it's not as scary. The Drow in the Underdark have a belief system around spiders, such as spiders are not really scary, they're almost seen as blessings or signs of their goddess visiting them. You could make an argument that Lolth is scary. She is. You know, let's bring it back to D&D for a second. So consider this: if the prior redux of that book wasn't really hitting home, I want you to consider this chart that I made. Right? This is just paint. I whipped this up in paint before the stream for you all. So if it looks really, really like weird, that's why. I made it in paint. Because I wanted to convey this to you. That there are these 5 different points of the unknown, of horror, and all around. These don't necessarily mean values are something directly in between violence and fear. But I tried to kind of line it up in as strong a case as I could make. But in all honesty, we can't exist without the space between the things that make us exist. The space between the molecules that comprise us are just as much a part of us as the stuff that makes us. And for the holistic approach to telling your horror story, you have to bear this in mind. What are the beliefs of the people in the environment that you want to violate? What are the morals that you are going to push with your scary story? What is the atmosphere? Because if the atmosphere is Equestria in the My Little Pony role-playing game, that's the environment. Everything is, castles and rainbows and magic and unicorns. And suddenly, the My Little Pony role-playing game crosses over into Alien RPG. The atmosphere has changed. It is jarring. It is scary because now the norm, where everything is sunshine and rainbows and happiness, is directly challenged. You can't just go to the orchard and pick apples. I'm sorry, Applejack. You can no longer just count on being the best girl as rarity. Because all of a sudden you got to do things that you didn't before. The world has been upended, the atmosphere. And bounding from this, when you're telling a story, I will work the camera, but I also want to make sure that you know that you can do this in person as well. All right? What are ways that we can, especially with atmosphere, how can we convey something has terror? How can you build terror or enhance horror? Here's a tried and true method. I'm the leprechaun! Come on, Wayne, you're freaking me out. I'm the leprechaun! Come on, Wayne, this isn't funny. Always after me, pot of gold! Wayne, you're freaking me out, man! The classic underlit. Grab a flashlight, grab your phone. Why is this disturbing? Can any of you tell me? I mean, beyond the fact you're seeing my face. Why is this disturbing? Not just because I took your donut. The reason why something like that can accentuate discomfort or add... Exactly. It can be uncanny valley. It can be the distortion of facial features. We are so used to seeing people with straight-on light or light from above because of the sun. It is very rare, especially in nature, to see an underlit face or underlit features of things. We're not used to seeing the underneath. The shadows aren't supposed to be up here, darkening where we normally associate the eyes. Instead, I'm sure you all got a good look at the bags under my eyes. The light is jarring because it goes against our norm, here we go, of seeing people with direct light or light from above. And so it's unsettling, uncanny valley, like Phil said. What's another technique you can use to enhance suspense? Well, Rip Artist brought it up, the creepy voice. Each of us have our own natural voice, and despite the differences in our voices, for the most part, we get what a normal voice is. If something upset Orchid Twilight to the point where she was cussing in Chinese, I wouldn't know the words she's saying, but I guarantee you the tone of her voice would tell me that something's wrong. Just like for any of you, Phil, for any of the languages that you speak, I could probably tell if you are upset or happy or whatever. Because as human beings, we understand when the vocal cords tighten, what it means. When the voices get loud, what that... It's a universal thing. Play into that as you are accentuating. ASMR, in a sense, does, but ASMR is supposed to be a lot more peaceful. Remember when the document we looked at before talks about not wanting to touch the monster or be close because it is impure? Oh, we're getting it back to academics? I'm right behind you. Talking very softly, even in your ear. But you didn't hear me approach, and now I'm behind you. And there's nothing you can do about it. So just be good and cooperate, won't you? This will all be over soon. The nightmare will be over. All too soon. You get close. You can modulate your voice. The proximity to your microphone if you're broadcasting through a virtual tabletop, and the tone of your voice. even the fact you can see me, I very consciously I do it in real life. I mean, this is real life in a sense. I do this in person as well. Though when I'm on camera, I really try to gesticulate more on camera for you to accentuate the words that I say. Because I want you to feel as if you are in a natural environment here in front of me and we're talking face to face. I'm looking at you. Yeah, you. Yeah, we're talking. When I play my Gangrel Vampire with my friends, old BJ Tucker talks like this. Now, a lot of people don't usually talk like this, because his voice is a little extra growly for some reason. What would it be that could have caused old BJ Tucker to have such a growly, grumpy voice? Could it be that he really hates being disturbed? Well, that's one of them. But there might be something deeper for you to discover. You see, the curse of being a gangrel. You end up changing over time. You take on features that you didn't have before. A little bit like a second puberty, I guess you could call it. Because parts of you start changing. And Tucker, he's done some changing over the years that he's been dead. And wouldn't you know, part of that is his voice. Because this is his normal speaking voice. This is how he talks to you calmly. And this is also how he can talk to you before you'll never be talked to again. Now, alright, so there are other things, Bane. Smoking or a throat trauma of some kind. But we still hear that voice, and we think something is off with that voice. Something happened. What was it? Was it smoking? Are you a feral animal vampire? You know, this one naturally leads to the other supposition. But that's not a normal voice. Just like, you know, Wilhelm scream. That's a voice. That's not a normal voice. And you go, oh, something just happened. Look, the very ragged scars across his neck gave us no clues. So, play with your lighting. Like, not even just with, like, you're describing the scene lighting. Play with your lighting. Play with your voice. Don't forget to get close, either. Remember, horror can be found in detail. And a lot of you are seeing me up close, maybe for the very first time. I have eyes like anyone else, but now you're disturbingly close to my eyes. And you can see details in those eyes. The devil's in the details, as they say. And when you start getting into the minutia of things, you normally never see the blood vessels in someone's eyes. But when you're reading a story, or your storyteller, DM, GM is describing, the person comes staggering out of the bar. Their eyes are wild and bloodshot. We get to the minutia of the details, and those details, all of a sudden, either are part of the atmosphere or can contradict the norms. Yeah, like Clint Eastwood's lower, gravelly voice. Describe the smell of things. That's often forgotten when we roleplay. And smell is it is the only one of our senses that is directly connected to the brain. The others have to go through the nervous system and the spinal cord and everything. Your olfactory sense is directly hardwired to your brain. This is why even there have been cases where Alzheimer's patients who have forgotten a lot of things, a lot of parts of their life, might be able to smell an apple pie and recall a day back when they were 20. Oh, I remember it was a summer day, and that's the summer that I met my wife. I don't remember her name, but, you know, and then they start going off of memories that were awakened by the sense of smell, but our smell is so primordial. Have you ever smelled something like have you ever smelled a dead mouse that you might have had in your house? You go, ooh wee. And that's just a mouse. We as animals are hardwired to pick up on the smell of death, the smell of you know, things that we should avoid, danger smells. If you use the sense of smell, you can make things very enriching. And especially if you want to enrich your horror, that's something you can do. Something else you can do. You can stand up like this. And now, fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. What am I doing? You are looking up, and now this plays into the underlight. But you can see I have natural light from above. But I am strong. I am dominant. I am over you. I have the power. I have the power. I have the power. I'm in control. You know, you are diminished. You are smaller and weaker. You are vulnerable to the giant in the D&D story. You are vulnerable to the 10-foot-tall xenomorph getting ready to get you with a second mouth. You are larger than normal. You are unnatural. And that makes for very good presentation in your role-playing games. If you stand up as the storyteller and everyone else is sitting down, it doesn't matter if you're naturally short, you're still going to be a lot taller than people. And you can modulate your voice. And now, of course, we can get into doing things like wearing makeup and wigs or prosthetic teeth or masks. That plays into it as well. Done the standing bit many times when things get exciting. And these are ways at the table within a story you can enhance the fear, the disgust. Remember, in that paper, horror is born out of fear and disgust combined. And there's a lot of other things that we can do to go through and accentuate it. Remember the atmosphere of your story. Remember the norms of the culture. This is what generally everyone does. The values are what people generally hold dear. The morals are the guidance of behavior, either personally or in the society. So a lot of these are close, but there are distinctions, and if you go after any of these will help create an unsettling nature, like a base to things, and then that's when you hit your points of horror, of gore, violence, fear, suspense, or the supernatural. And all of these techniques that we've talked about tonight can apply to D&D, can apply to My Little Pony, can apply to Power Rangers RPG, can apply to Call of Cthulhu, can apply to tactical waifus, can apply to Honey Heist, etc. Maddie freaking me out before bed. I have to hurry up and go to sleep so I can have disturbing nightmares before I come to my senses. Be well, Bane, and thank you for hanging out tonight. And there you go. Bane goes to lurk, and Bane TBC was never heard from again. The end.